My name is Dmitry Glukhowsky, and I'm the author of this thing, and that's how my name is spelled. And also the composer of the plot and the dialogue of Metro Lost Light, the game. Well, the first version of Metro 2033 was actually quite different from the final one. It was 2 times smaller, and it ended with an abrupt death of the main character. It was a completely non-commercial, non-format thing. And most publishers to whom I sent the piece just ignored me. And one told me that no, that's not the conventional thing, we cannot publish it. I basically decided to tell them to fuck off, and I would publish myself online for free. In Russia, the tradition of pirate libraries where everyone uploads the books belonging to everyone is great. So my thought was, if you can publish the book that doesn't belong to you, why couldn't you publish a book that does belong to you? So I established a website, and that was 11 years ago. I established a website and I put the entire text of the novel on it. I made it open source, and everyone could actually easily access it and read it whenever they were and whatever material status they had, whether they were or were not rich enough to allow themselves to buy it. The book has since become a bestseller, and it is still fully available for free on the website, so everyone who cares to read it can read it. Also, while writing it and completing the novel 2 years later, I decided to make it interactive, and I was publishing the book chapter by chapter while taking commands from the public, from the audience. They would project things, forecast things, criticize things, and the novel has actually become interactive, while I took or not some of their commands into account while writing new chapters. So, in a way, it was quite a pioneering thing back at the time. Well, they found a website when there was no book. Long before the book has become a bestseller, they just found this website. They decided that they love the text, they love the story and the world, and they approached me saying, hey, I want to make a game based on your book. My approach was, if you are talented and skilled and you feel the atmosphere, why not? It is in no sense worse than creating a film based on it. And video games are generally treated as crap or as a primitive genre, but that's only because those games are not being written, created seriously. The story level is quite superficial in many games, although there are brilliance, of course. So my idea was, like, if you have a story serious enough and you have talented, skilled people who are creating a game based on it, it can be as good, as serious, and as emotional as any movie. And that's exactly that was the case. 4A did a great job adapting the first novel into a game. They basically took the book and turned it into a game. But for the second book, there was no storyline ready. So I decided not to give it away to some hired mercenary that would do some stupid things just to get paid for that. What I did was writing free of charge for them a storyline and the entire piece of dialogue for that game, just to make sure that the continuation of the story is as good or even better than the first part. They came to me when it was like half the book published online. So my strategy of sharing it with everyone, hoping that this works like a virus, contaminating people's minds and making them advise it to each other, sharing it with each other, it worked completely. So I managed to contaminate the minds of 4A, and they still can't get healthy. They are still sick with it. So the Metro of Moscow is nothing like any other subway system in the world. It's not maybe the biggest, because the subway of Tokyo is bigger. It's not maybe the oldest, because subway of London is older. But it's definitely the most stunning and perfect and beautiful thing that has ever been created under the earth, underground. So the subway of Moscow was planned as a pantheon of Soviet gods, in a way. It was planned to impress both the people from the province and the Muscovites and the foreign guests who would come to the Soviet Union and show them the grandeur and the splendidness of the Soviet Empire. So every station was formed as a palace with a different style, some of them with marble, many of them with marble actually, and the bronze, and some of them like gilt, some with granite, some with stained glass. Every station has its own unique face. Many had sculptures, you know, and because stylistically, as well as Nazi Germany, Soviet Union tried to date back to the antique style, you know. It has this imperial grandeur in it, and it is definitely very impressive. Then over the years, this splendidness and grandeur were wearing out a little bit, getting old and slightly decaying, you know, and being repaired, which make it even more beautiful and more authentic, because they're not so freshly looking right now. But the most stunning thing is that I discovered only after some 10 years of riding the subway, daily almost, that the subway of Moscow is not what it seems at all. It's not just a transportation structure. It is the world's biggest nuclear shelter, planned, engineered, and constructed as a huge bomb bunker or an atomic bomb bunker. The stations lie as deep as dozens and sometimes 100 meters below the ground, and that's a height of a 30-story tall building, but below the ground. They are all equipped with hermetic barriers, hermetic doors that lock in case of a bombing, chemical attack, biological attack, or nuclear attack. They are interconnected with each other clearly. Some of them have artesian wells that create an independent source of fresh water. There are storages of food and medication out there. And a part of that, out of 170 and growing stations of Moscow Metro, there is a separate structure called Metro 2, which is a secret governmental side metro, the stations of which are located beneath the governmental buildings, such as ministries, Kremlin, KGB, former KGB, now FSB, university, Moscow State University, the library, the Russian State Library. And the purpose was to evacuate quickly all the ruling intellectual and scientific elites in case of a nuclear attack. So between the moment when the American missiles had to be launched from the German bases till they reach Russia, there was 7 minutes. And that's 7 minutes when you first hear the alert, the alarm, and to the moment when you have to reach the closest metro station and hide before the doors are locked and everything goes to hell. And those who are working in whatever, special services, ministries, army, government, professors and scientists, some of them, they had these separate stations beneath their buildings. So they had the time to run there, hide there, and the stations were interconnected by train lines. The purpose was to evacuate them, and some say, and I know people who actually explored some of these tunnels when they were not guarded, abandoned in the first years of the post-Soviet Union. So they say that some of the lines lead as far as to Ural Mountains, thousands of kilometers from Moscow. I've heard people saying that they walked that for 2 weeks, or a week or 2 weeks, I don't remember. They turned back because they never reached the end of the tunnel. And nobody knows where it actually ended, you know. And it sounds like science fiction, but it's not, because the length of the tunnels in Moscow subway is of over 300 kilometers. So who prevents you actually to construct other 300 kilometers if you're serious about the prospect of a nuclear war coming? If all the Stalin's years and then Khrushchev years and Brezhnev years, that all was a preparation for World War III, you know, people were preparing for that. When you discover that about try to imagine that you're discovering this about the Hochbahn in Hamburg. That would be completely fascinating for you. So definitely invaded my imagination when I started fantasizing what would be if it had been like that, you know. And definitely the biggest inspiration was the metro itself. So Metro was my main inspiration. And then I just took the map of Metro, and the map gave me hints of what I'm going to do with it. So I knew from the very beginning that 20 years after, there is no going to be any single governmental structure. It will all collapse. It will be anarchy. It will be city-states forming alliances and fighting with each other. It's also much funnier that way. So these stations will probably be communists because the nostalgic feelings are very strong within the Russian society. And these stations are probably going to be Nazi because we have quite a strong skinhead and Nazi movement, like Russian nationalists. But in a way, they're being Russian nationalists. They also kind of long aesthetically for Nazi Germany, like the Gothic writing and the whatever SS history and all that. That is not even legal here. And it's stupid because their grandfathers died fighting Nazis, and they kind of very sympathetic with the Nazis. And that's weird. But if it's the truth, that's how it's going to be in Metro as well. The harder the times, the more people stick to primitive ideologies, because primitive ideologies are something to hold on. You cannot go into philosophy when you're threatened every day and you're hungry. You have to have a simple truth, and the simpler and more cruel it is, the better it is in the days of hardship. At least so proves the human history. So that maybe was the biggest inspiration in the Metro itself. Why did I write it? Well, I started writing it when I was 17. I finished the book when I was 24. So these years is the young age in which you are living your home, like in Russia more or less. Well, I went to different countries to study. When you're trying to understand what your place in this life is going to be, whether you find something to stick to, any beliefs, ideologies, are you going to have a mission? Do people have a mission? What am I going to believe in? Am I going to find any place in this life, basically? And in a lot of senses, the book is about a young person trying to understand where does he belong. Should he believe in this ideology? Should he believe in that ideology? Should he believe in God? Should he believe in anything at all? What's his mission? Is it to become a war hero as he wants to? Or is it to become an interpreter and to help different races create communication, a symbiosis, and then survive? Or is his mission just to ignore everything and stay at home, not going everywhere? And I think that in a lot of senses, this is just a vital question that every young person, boy or girl, is facing. What do you do? What's your job is going to be? What do you want to do in this life? Are you going to succeed or are you going to fail? How not to omit your life chance? How to become somebody instead of becoming a couch potato watching TV, and that's it. And that was the question that worried me a lot. And all the drama that actually is holding this book, not speaking about the adventure and monsters, is about this young boy saying, what am I supposed to believe in? So there's one guy saying we are all going to die, save us, kill the monsters. The other says, we're all going to die unless we find a smarter solution. And he's just trying to find his way. And I think that my inspiration, well, not inspiration, my motivation and my thoughts were about that. And that's why the book is popular actually with the young people, not because of the monsters. Monsters are just entertainment. They're fun, they're cool, but the psychological grip is a different thing. You're just reading about yourself, choosing where to go in this life. Well, definitely the best medium for telling stories are the books. All the other arts have a limitation. A movie should be 2 hours long, otherwise people get bored. Games have to have action elements, otherwise people just do not participate in them. And books are just about storytelling. It's the pure storytelling. On the other hand, movies have a much higher concentration of drama. They're supposed to grasp your attention. They reach out to much more massive audience, and they are much more just generally impressing people over the short time. 2 hours you spend with a fiction character, and this story can stay with you for your entire life. At the same time, on the book you can spend weeks, a month maybe. Games give a great opportunity to really put the gamer, the audience, into the shoes of the character. And this is not to be omitted. You can really be in that world, like look around, feel it, and soon maybe you'll be able to touch things or smell things, you know. So I think that books have their advantage, of course, but games have theirs. Now the problem with the games is that at the time they were created for teenagers by teenagers, like 20 years ago. And so they mainly centered on action elements. When you're 13, like it's like me reading Harry Harrison. I read it when I was 13, I was excited. I read it when I was 20-something, I thought, what the shit is that? You know, that's complete crap, you cannot read it. But then there is Ray Bradbury. You can read Ray Bradbury when you're 16 and when you're 60 and still find him as a great emotional author. So it's not a question of genre, science fiction versus not science fiction. It's that when you're growing up, you discover new emotions, new conflicts, you're going through new situations. You know, it's not just fiction, adventure things like Jules Verne or whatever, Harry Harrison. You discover the new conflicts, love, and the standoff with the person you love, and the separation, and being loved against not being loved, and you know, lots of conflicts in that. And then getting kids, and the conflict of generations, and lots of emotions, like troubles with parents, conflicts with other whatever men and women, which is not about the shooting, but you know, whatever, intrigues into your work maybe. So lots of different emotions that someone who's 13 old doesn't even know about. He knows about like, my parents are shitty and I want to shag a girl, that's it. And yeah, give me somebody to kill, at least in the game. It has a lot to do with the hormonal balance. Then your hormones go calmer and you discover that life is more multifaceted and different than you imagined it when you were 13. But the game storytelling fucking remains at the same level. You know, for most titles, it still is there. Shooting, running, and behaving yourself like a tourist in Turkey. Like, okay, I cannot do that at home, but now I'm in Turkey, so let me get drunk and whatever, like harass waiters and get a fight with an Englishman, you know. And that's the way most gamers play video games. Now, more and more people find that dissatisfying. Gamers are growing up. I used to be that teenager, and people who are still playing games used to be those teenagers, but they're 30 now, they're 40 now, and they have discovered that life is more than just killing, running, you know, hiding, whatever, fearing and killing. And they're not satisfied with that old level of storytelling. If you want to touch them, you have evoke controversies. If you want to make them feel things, you have to evoke other feelings such as love and hope and desperation and whatever, and dreaming and humiliation maybe. Some strong things that we do have in the real life but never have in video games. Then I thought, I'm not a game writer anyway, and I don't think that game writing is a profession. What I will do in Metro Last Light will be writing a story as serious, mature and deep as if it was a book or a movie. I will not talk down to the audience. I will not think that they're all primitive teenagers. I would create a thing that would be appealing and thrilling and psychologically engaging to myself, that I would feel goosebumps while writing that. And if I have to break some taboos, if I had to do controversial things, or things for grown-ups or adults, I will do that. Because if it makes me feel things when I'm writing that, then I can hope that people will feel something when we'll be playing it or living the life of the character. So, and I think more and more that will become the trend, because video games are already a huge industry. They can, since a very long time, allow themselves hire the best of Hollywood screenwriters, or even those who work for HBO, let's say. And HBO is, I think, in the mass market, giving us the standard of the drama and the controversy that is appealing, that is able to touch us. Series like Dexter or Game of Thrones or Homeland that have the necessary level of controversy and maturity are piercing this shield of I know everything, I've seen all these movies, it doesn't care anything about. We are impressed by that. I am impressed by that. They can hire them. I don't want they keep allowing game designers write the storyline. Take professionals, take people who understand grammar, who maybe even had some life outside of the gaming industry. So, and that's more and more, I think, is going to become the trend. It has to become the trend. We, again, are trendsetters, as always. I take this one. So I would keep impressing everyone, saying like, I'm a book author, do not kill me, do not eat me alive. I can do useful things. Look what I did, you know. And that's going to be my, I think, the best, my best way to survive. That would be one thing. The other thing would be maybe Bible, because you can get lots of new plots from there. I don't think that I'm useful as a soldier or as a rock star or as a peasant. The only thing I can tell is telling stories, actually. And the Bible offers a damn selection of good stories, you know, that you can like retell, reset in the subway. And it's definitely, although I'm an atheist, and I don't think that God even exists, but the book is cool. And the final thing would be, oh my God, would I say the cyanide in my tooth? But no. Oh yeah, a girlfriend. The last thing would be a girlfriend, and not an inflatable one, a living one. Living ones are better than the silicone inflatable. Recommend you. No, I'm not a survival freak. No. I don't even have a Swiss Army knife, let alone. I have a number of gas masks at my home because I'm like occasionally signing them and giving them to people. But no, I'm not a survival freak. I don't even think that I'm gonna survive the apocalypse. Actually, no, maybe not. Although some people do discover themselves to be real, you know, like fighting animals if they are put under circumstances. You never know. Actually, just one little touch, like you can finish here. I've been giving quite a thought to the question how people become war heroes. And my idea is like, some of the war heroes are just criminals in real life. They just don't have this barrier between like killing or not killing, risking lives, not risking lives. And they find themselves really at ease during a war, unlike in the peaceful times, because in the peaceful times they are kind of outcasts. The level of aggression, the level of the risk assessment, you know, is completely not suitable for the peaceful life. But in the time of war, they are becoming heroes. On the other hand, I think that if there is an occupation of your country, will you resist it or not? I think if the occupation is more or less civilized, nobody's hanging your friends on the street, you'll just say, okay. So all the things about like, I go defend my motherland, like, maybe you will not go and defend your motherland, but if you're occasionally find some members of your family killed, you have to feel a personal motivation that like, and you cannot keep living with that. Although many people kept living with that. So war and everything around war has lots of bullshit around it. Like, people are making so much myth and propaganda around it. And we don't even, the new generation, my generation, your generation, and the MTV generation, they don't know anything about that. It's way more complicated and horrible and primitive and less romantic than we think. It's much more animal. And we can only imagine that or read some references or historical books, but then they're also censored and prepared for the mass readership. So I think all in all that it's much better to play Metro than to live in Metro.